What if I told you that in the shadowed halls of a medieval fortress, where the air hangs heavy with the scent of damp stone and flickering torchlight, a child of just 11, orphaned and trembling under the weight of a crown too heavy for her slender shoulders, becomes the most hunted prize in all of Europe? Picture this. The year is 1488, and the winds off the Atlantic howl through the ancient stones of Nantes, carrying whispers of invasion, betrayal, and the relentless march of armies. Bent on conquest, a little girl, Anne of Brittany, steps into the dim light of her coronation, her eyes wide with the terror of what lies ahead, her small hands clutching the edges of a velvet robe that feels like chains. But here's the shocking truth that history books dare not whisper. This innocent duchess, born on January 25, 1477, in the Château des Ducs de Bretagne, would one day be forced to walk down an aisle of cold stone, her hand trembling as she pledges herself not to a lover, but to the very king whose armies are marching to slaughter her people's dreams of freedom. Her executioner, cloaked in royal velvet, his eyes gleaming with ambition. And what if I revealed that this marriage wasn't just a union of flesh and blood, but a chain forged in secrecy that would bind an entire nation to oblivion, echoing through centuries like a curse unspoken? Stay with me, because the secrets buried in these forgotten archives, letters stained with ink and tears, contracts hidden in Vatican vaults, will chill you to the bone. And we're only just beginning to unearth them, layer by layer, revelation by revelation. But hold on. What if the girl who wore the crown also bore a limp from birth, a hidden flaw that whispered of her vulnerability, passed down like a shadow to her own children? The darkness deepens already. Imagine the air thick with the scent of salt spray from the crashing Atlantic waves and the earthy tang of Breton forests, the rugged cliffs of Brittany, standing defiant against the relentless sea that both protects and isolates this jewel of Celtic heritage. It is the late 15th century, a time when kings wield swords like pens, signing treaties in blood and ink alike, their ambitions carving empires. From the bones of the weak, France, under the ambitious young Charles VIII, hungers for expansion, its eyes fixed on the independent Duchy of Brittany, rich in trade routes that snake across the ocean, fiercely autonomous, where women could inherit thrones in defiance of the male-dominated Salic laws elsewhere, a place where ancient Celtic tongues still murmur in the villages and ermine symbols flutter on banners like ghosts of old freedoms. But history's official tomes, those dusty volumes in the royal libraries, gloss over the darkness here. The brutal power plays that left fields scarred by battle, the coerced vows whispered in candlelit chambers, the hidden griefs of a girl thrust into a web of betrayal spun by men who saw her as nothing more than a pawn on a grand chessboard. This story matters because it exposes the forbidden underbelly of royalty, where love is a myth peddled to the masses, and marriage a weapon of conquest sharper than any blade. Why was Anne of Brittany this child queen born to Duke Francis II and his wife Margaret of Foix, doomed to wed the man who sought to erase her homeland from the map? And what unspeakable sacrifices did she make? Pregnancies that racked her body, alliances that crumbled like ash, to keep the flame of independence flickering in the gathering shadows of French domination? These truths were suppressed for centuries, deemed too dangerous by the victors, too revealing of how empires devour the innocent while the world applauds their glory. Scribes in Paris courts rewrote the narratives, painting Anne as a dutiful consort rather than the defiant duchess she was. Her letters burned or buried to silence her voice. But as we delve deeper into this labyrinth of intrigue, prepare yourself, because the revelations waiting in the heart of this tale will make you question every fairy tale you've ever heard about crowns and thrones, every romanticized portrait of royal unions. And here's a hook to pull you further. What if her first marriage was a proxy vow to a distant king, sealed in a cathedral echoing with forbidden hopes, only to be shattered by cannons thundering at the gates? The stage is set. Now, the why behind the storm. Let us begin at the why. The simmering ambitions that set this tragedy in motion, ambitions that festered like an open wound in the courts of Europe. In the grand yet foreboding Château de Nantes, where the walls seem to whisper secrets of ancient dukes, Anne is born amidst the turmoil of her father's endless wars against French encroachment. Duke Francis II, a man whose every breath is a battle, dreams of a free Brittany, allying desperately with England, Spain, and the Holy Roman Empire to ward off the wolf at the door, the ever-encroaching French crown under Louis XI, and now his successors. But he has no sons, only Anne and her sister Isabel, born before May 10, 1481. And in this fragile political climate, where alliances shift like sand dunes under stormy skies, Anne's future becomes the battlefield upon which nations clash. Educated from a tender age by her sharp-eyed governess Françoise de Dinan, Lady of Chateaubriand, and by marriage Countess of Laval, and tutors like the court poet Jean Machineau, young Anne absorbs the weight of her destiny like a sponge in a sea of ink. She learns to dance with grace in silk slippers that hide her congenital hip displacement, a limp she conceals with heeled shoes, a secret vulnerability that adds to her aura of quiet strength, sings melodies that echo through the halls, plays music on the lute, and studies statecraft, reading and writing in French, perhaps a smattering of Latin, though the ancient tongues of Greek and Hebrew elude her, and the native Breton language remains a mystery she never masters. But beneath these lessons lies the darkness. From infancy, Anne is the instrument of her father's politics, promised in marriage to a parade of princes to secure military aid and financial lifelines against France. At just 3 years old, in 1480, she's betrothed to Edward, Prince of Wales, son of Edward IV of England, a union that vanishes when the prince disappears after 1483. Then comes Henry Tudor, the future Henry VII, Maximilian I of Austria, the repulsive Alain I of Albret, whom she later refuses outright, declaring before the papal court that she only entertained his suit out of filial obedience. Even Louis, Duke of Orleans, the man who will one day be her second husband, already wed to another, John IV of Chalon-Arlay, Edward Stafford, 3rd Duke of Buckingham, and Viscount John II of Rohan. These betrothals are secret alliances, forged in shadowed chambers with rings exchanged and vows murmured. But they crumble under the weight of political calculations, leaving Anne's heart scarred by false hopes. Here's where it gets darker. In 1486, the estates of Brittany officially recognize her as her father's heiress on February 10th, amid the murky waters of succession laws under semi-Salic principles, heightened by the 1365 Treaty of Guérande that allowed female inheritance but now threatens dynastic crisis, especially after the sale of rival claims by Nicole of Blois to King Louis de Yoff in 1480. France eyes annexation like a predator scenting blood. Then, in 1488, disaster strikes with the fury of a tempest. Francis is defeated at the Battle of Saint-Aubin-du-Cormier, ending the Mad War, and signs the humiliating Treaty of Sablé on August 19, stipulating that his daughters cannot marry without French royal approval, a clause that hangs like a noose around Anne's neck. Days later, he falls from his horse during a hunt, his body broken on the cold, unforgiving ground, leaving 11-year-old Anne as Duchess. On his deathbed, he extracts a promise from her, never consent to the duchy's subjugation to France, and appoints Marshal Jean IV de Rieux as her guardian. The estate's crown earned Rennes on February 10, 1489, the air buzzing with air peril as she flees Nantes amid divided advisers plotting her marriage. Who will protect this child from the wolves circling closer? England with its Tudor ambitions? The Habsburgs across the Alps? Or will France strike first? Their cannons already rumbling? The fragile peace shatters as French regent Anne de Beaujeu, known as the least foolish woman in France, but with a heart of iron and eyes like daggers, plots full annexation. Ambitions clash in the courts. Charles VIII, barely out of 8. Boyhood at 14 when he ascends in 1483, sees Brittany's wealth, its vital ports teeming with ships laden with spices and silks, as his birthright, fueling a war that will leave rivers red with the blood of Breton soldiers. But no one suspects yet how personal this conquest will become, how a girl's hand in marriage could seal a nation's fate, turning a duchy into a province. And what if I told you her mother, Margaret of Foix, died when Anne was just 9, leaving her to navigate this viper's nest alone, her grief a silent companion in the long nights. The why builds to a crescendo. Now, the what that shatters illusions. Now, the what? The shocking truths that history tried to bury under layers of propaganda and forgotten. Scrolls. As suitors swarm like vultures over a fallen stag, Anne's guardians, torn between loyalty and fear, arrange a proxy marriage in 1490 to Maximilian I, the powerful king of the Romans and future Holy Roman Emperor. In the echoing nave of Rennes Cathedral, where the stained glass casts bloody hues on the stone floor. At 13, she stands veiled in white samite, a stand-in groom speaking vows on Maximilian's behalf, her heart pounding with a fragile hope for an alliance that could save Brittany from the French maw. This is no myth. It's a defiant act etched in forbidden letters smuggled across borders and sealed with rings of gold emblazoned with the ermine of her house. On December 19, 1490, she becomes Queen of the Romans, a title that hangs precariously until February 15, 1492. But, oh, the darkness deepens like ink, spreading on parchment. France erupts in fury at this violation of the Treaty of Sablé. Charles VIII, this ambitious king, with dreams of Italian glory and a court rife with schemers, declares it treason, his voice echoing through the halls of the Louvre. His armies march in the spring of 1491, cannons thundering across the mist-shrouded fields of Brittany, besieging Rennes in a winter of starvation. Despair that grips the city like icy fingers. Imagine the cold seeping into Anne's bones as she huddles in the castle towers, her people crying out from the battlements, the acrid smoke of fires mingling with the cries of the wounded below. Aid trickles in, small troops from England under Henry VII, from the Holy Roman Empire, Aragon and Castile, but it's not enough to stem the tide. The Habsburgs are preoccupied with wars in Hungary, Castile locked in the Reconquista against Granada. By November 15, 1491, after 2 months of relentless assault, the city falls, and tragedy compounds. Anne's sister Isabel dies during the siege, her young life snuffed out like a candle in the wind. Charles enters triumphantly, and under duress, both sign the Treaty of Rennes, ending the Fourth French campaign in Brittany. Anne, now 14, faces a choice sharper than any sword: surrender her proxy marriage, or watch her duchy burn to ashes. She chooses survival, but at a cost that echoes through eternity. The Pope Innocent VIII, coerced by French influence, annuls her union with Maximilian retroactively to December 5, 1491, deeming it unconsummated, and grants a dispensation for her marriage to Charles despite their 4th degree consanguinity on February 15, 1492, in exchange for papal concessions that smell of corruption. Shocking, isn't it? The invader, the executioner of her independence, becomes her husband. On December 6, 1491, in the dim dawn light of Château d'Aix, Langeais, far from prying eyes to avoid the illegality until papal approval, she walks to the altar in a gown heavy as chains, escorted by her own defeated troops to feign consent. The ceremony rushed and almost illicit, the air thick with incense, unspoken resentment, and the faint metallic tang of fear. She brings 2 beds to their chambers, a silent, defiant symbol of her unyielding spirit, a barrier against the conqueror's touch. But here's a revelation that unsettles the soul. The marriage contract, signed amid the ruins of her hopes, includes a clause so draconian it chills the blood. If Charles dies without a male heir, Anne must marry his successor, ensuring Brittany's eternal bondage to France. A ticking bomb hidden in legalese. Was. This love, this union born of siege and surrender? No, It was conquest veiled in vows, a betrayal that history's chroniclers would later sanitize as diplomatic necessity. And as Queen of France, crowned and anointed at Saint-Denis Basilica on February 8, 1492, by Archbishop André d'Espinay of Bordeaux with oil on her head and chest, Anne endures a court that mocks her as the Breton witch, her every move watched by spies, her title as Duchess stripped away by Charles, who forbids it stripped away by Charles. Use? Sparking endless contention. She appoints Gabriel Myron as her chancellor and first doctor, but power eludes her. During Charles's Italian campaigns, regency falls to his iron-fisted sister Anne de Beaulieu. Pregnancies follow like curses. 6 in 6 years, each a desperate bid for an heir that might preserve her home, her body racked by labors in opulent yet isolating castles like Amboise, where she builds her chapel, or Loches, Plessis, Lyon, Grenoble, and Moulins, often separated from her infants by the demands of court. But tragedy strikes relentlessly. Her son Charles Orland, born October 11, 1492, dies of measles at 3 on December 16, 1495, his tiny body laid in Tours Cathedral while whispers of poison, perhaps from rivals, fearing a Breton heir, swirl in the shadows like smoke. A stillborn son in August 1493, premature during a forest drive near Courcelles, buried at Notre Dame de Clery. A stillborn daughter in March 1495. Another Charles, Dauphin, born September 8, and dead October 2, 1496, buried at Tours, prompting Anne's despairing withdrawal to Moulins. Francis, Dauphin, born and gone in July 1497, also at Tours, and Anne of France, dead at birth on March 20, 1498, at Château de Plessis-les Tours. At 14, she is described as young and rosy-cheeked. By 22, after these 6 pregnancies every 14 months, she is pale and wan, her body a battlefield of loss. Rhetorical question to haunt you. How does a girl bear such grief, knowing her womb is the ultimate weapon in this war for her homeland soul? And rumors persist, suppressed in official annals, that rivals like Louise of Savoy delighted in her miscarriages, whispers of witchcraft darkening the corridor. But wait, looms, darker still, promising betrayals you won't see coming, twists that will leave you breathless. Feel the tension coil tighter. And now, the how, the chronological descent into this heart of darkness, layered with betrayal, fleeting lust, and raw thirst for power that pulses through every vein of this saga. Feel the tension build like a storm gathering over the channel as Anne navigates her gilded prison, the weight of her crown pressing down amid the splendor of French courts. Charles, obsessed with his Italian wars, leaves her to the mercy of his scheming sister Anne de Beaujeu, who intercepts her letters and thwarts her influence, the air in Amboise thick with suspicion and the scent of blooming roses in the gardens below. Sensory details flood the scene, the opulent halls of Amboise echoing with the strum of lutes and the chatter of courtiers. Yet Anne's chambers smell of bitter herbs to ease her endless labors, and the faint metallic hint of blood from yet another. Loss, Dutch. Their marriage begins coldly. She and Charles often live apart, her 2 beds a barrier he resents, but tolerates. In 1498, fate twists unexpectedly, shattering the fragile equilibrium. Charles, rushing to a tennis match in the spring air of Amboise, strikes his head on a low door lintel on April 7. Some sources say April 4, and collapses, dead at 27. His body cold on the wooden floor, leaving no male heirs to claim the throne or bind Brittany further. The court erupts in chaos, whispers of foul play rippling through the halls like wind through tapestries. But Anne? She seizes the moment like a shadow slipping through the night, her limp barely slowing her as she races back to Brittany, reclaiming her throne with the ferocity of a lioness. She restores Philippe d'Ontauban to the chancellery, names Jean de Chalon, Prince of Orange, as hereditary lieutenant general, appoints Squire of Texu to command Chateau de Brest, convenes the estates of Brittany in the Nantes, and it issues gold coins bearing her name and image, the metal gleaming with defiance under the forge's fire. Surrounded by a blooming court of poets, Italian humanist Publio Fausto Androlini, historian John Lemaire de Belgas, poet Gian Mauro Andaro, musicians like Johannes Ockeghem, Antoine de Fevin, Loisette Compère, and Jean Mouton, whose compositions fill the air with haunting melodies. Anne becomes the first queen of France sought as a patron by artists, her libraries swelling with illuminated manuscript. But the contract binds her still, activating like a trap springing shut. She must wed Louis XII, Charles's cousin, the new king, whose own marriage to the Baron Joan of France is crumbling under the weight of childlessness. Louis, ambitious and charming with a silver tongue, seeks papal annulment from Alexander VI, who dissolves it by year's end in exchange for favors. Anne, now 21 and a dowager queen, negotiates from a position of strength for the first time, voice steady in the salt-kissed halls of Nantes. On January 7, 1499, the very day of their marriage, in a ceremony blending French pomp and Breton ritual, they sign a third contract, a masterpiece of cunning. Louis exercises ruler powers in Brittany, but acknowledges her as Duchess, issuing decisions in her name. The second child, son or daughter, would inherit Brittany separately from the French throne, a clause designed to preserve her duchy forever, though fate would later ignore it. Her second, coronation as Louis' consort, occurs on November 18, 1504, at Saint-Denis, the incense swirling thicker than before. For a time, passion blooms unexpectedly. Louis, smitten by her sharp wit and unyielding spirit, showers her with gifts of jewels that sparkle like stars, adores her openly, while Anne wields power unseen by previous queens, patronizing arts that celebrate Breton pride. Illuminated manuscripts like the Grand Hears of Anne of Brittany, crafted around 1508 by Jean Bourdichon, depicting her in prayer or writing letters to her husband, glowing with gold leaf and vibrant pigments. Tapestries, possibly including the Hunt of the Unicorn, commissioned for her 1499 wedding. Threads woven with scenes of pursuit and capture, mirroring her own life. And printed books, like a modern French version of Christine de Pizan's The City of Ladies, empowering women in a man's world. She oversees architectural wonders at Chateaux of Blois and Amboise, her ducal presence evident in every carved ermine and knotted cord emblem, her motto non mutera, I will not change, etched in stone and heart. But lust fades into the harsh light of politics, as more pregnancies test her frail body, 5 with Louis, bringing her total to at least 11. Claude of France, born October 13, 1499, a sturdy girl who survives to succeed as Duchess. A son in late 1500 or early 1501, who dies young, a stillborn son on January 21, 1503 or 1503 or 1507, at Blois. Rennes of France, born October 20th. Marry Hercule Setta d'Este and become Duchess of Chartres, and another stillborn son in January 1513 at Blois. Miscarriages plague her, and rumors fester. Louise of Savoy, mother of the future Francis I, delights in them, whispers of her using witchcraft to curse Anne's sons, spells cast in hidden alcoves, suppressed in histories to protect the French narrative. Anne fights fiercely for her legacy, betrothing Claude to Charles of Austria, grandchild of her former Proxy husband Maximilian, on August 10, 1501, in Lyon, to forge unbreakable alliances and ensure French success in the Italian wars, countering Louis's private schemes to wed Claude to Francis of Angoulême. She refuses this until her dying breath, favoring Claude's Habsburg match or Rennes, inheriting the duchy. In 1505, during Louis's illness, she embarks on a pilgrimage, framed as the Trobrige, but truly a political tour of triumph. From June to September, riding through cheering crowds in Vannes, Quimper, and Rennes, collecting taxes with a firm hand, asserting her sovereignty, the dust of Breton roads clinging to her skirts, the salt wind whipping her veil. Letters from Louis reveal his anxiety, begging her return 6 times a day. His wretchedness without her, a crack in the royal facade. She expands her court into a finishing school for young noblewomen, maintains 100 Breton gentlemen as her guard, founds the Order of the Ladies of the Court in 1498, inspired by her father, a sisterhood of empowered women wearing knotted cords as symbols of fidelity and strength. Her emblems proliferate. The crowned A, the ermine bandwidth, potius mori quam fodari, rather die than dishonor. Or in Breton and dishonor, or in Breton, kentok merville eget bezain seotrit, combined with Charles's flaming sword and Louis' porcupine. A devoted mother, she spends tender moments with Claude and Renee, commissioning a prayer book for the lost Charles Orland and a primer for 8-year-old Claude, emphasizing her coat of arms to pass down values of resilience. While during the Italian Wars, she briefly becomes Queen of Naples from August 2, 1501, to January 31, 1504, and Duchess of Milan in spells from 1499, 1501,512. Titles that mock her captive status. Shrewd, proud, haughty, as described by contemporaries, she is a conscientious ruler, her administration blending French elegance with Breton fire. But controversies simmer. Historians like Georges Minois call her limited, petty, and vindictive, while others like Philippe Toureau portray her as ardently attached to her people, a mythologized good duchess in clogs for Breton regionalists, contrasting French narratives that downplay her resistance. Cliffhanger. But no one was prepared for the final betrayal, as illness creeps in like fog over the Loire, her body betraying her after years of unrelenting toll, and the shadows lengthen toward an end that will seal her legacy in heartbreak. The how unfolds to its bitter peak. The aftermath reveals the hidden consequences, the cover-ups that echo through centuries like footsteps in empty halls, casting long shadows into the future. Anne's body, weakened from over a dozen pregnancies and the constant strain of rule, succumbs to kidney stones that ravage her like invisible blades, her once rosy cheeks now ashen in the candlelight of her chambers. On January 9, 1514, in the Château de Blois, as dawn breaks pale and cold over the river, she slips away at 36, her final breaths a whisper of unfinished dreams, surrounded by weeping ladies of her court order. Her will, a final act of defiance penned in her own hand, demands her body be buried at Saint-Denis with the French kings. But her heart, encased in a gold reliquary inscribed in this little vessel, rests a heart greater than any in the world. Sent back to Brittany, buried in Nantes Cathedral beside her parents, a split legacy symbolizing her divided soul. She builds their tomb there with symbols of the 4 virtues: courage, temperance, justice, prudence, carved in stone, a testament to her unbowed will. Louis, grief-stricken yet opportunistic, ignores her plea for Renee to inherit, instead betrothing Claude to Francis of Angoulême on May 18, 1514, sealing Brittany's fate through their daughter. By 1532, under Francis I, the duchy is fully absorbed into France via the Treaty of Union, its Celtic tongue fading into whispers, its independence executed at last, ports seized, laws overwritten. Cover-ups abound. Official histories paint Anne as a dutiful queen, burying her resistance in footnotes, her order of the Ladies of the Court forgotten as a mere fashion, her political tours recast as pious pilgrimages. The witchcraft rumors against her by Louise of Savoy are hushed, lest they tarnish the Valois line. Long shadows cast forward. Her descendants weave into the Habsburgs through Claude's line, and the Savoys via Renee, influencing Europe, but the pain lingers in Breton folklore, where statues in Nantes weep silent tears for the lost duchess, and regionalists revive her as a patriot symbol, clogs and all, against French centralization. All open loops close here, in the quiet aftermath. The child who married her executioner, first Charles, then Louis, delayed the inevitable through sheer will, her heart forever split between conqueror and conquered, her body a map of sacrifices. But one last secret haunts the archives. In 2018, her reliquary heart was stolen from Nantes Cathedral, only to be recovered unscathed as if her spirit refuses to die, guarding Brittany's soul even now. The echoes fade, but a chill remains. As the echoes of this forbidden tale fade into the night, remember this ultimate truth. In the Game of Thrones, even thrones, bravest hearts are broken, their pieces scattered across history's cold floor. If this saga of shadowed vows and unyielding defiance has gripped your soul, leaving you haunted by the what-ifs, subscribe now to the channel that uncovers more buried histories, secrets that kings and queens would kill to keep hidden in the vaults of time. Like if Anne's unbreaking spirit, non-mutera, stirs the fire within you, and comment below. What royal secret, what forgotten betrayal, should we exhume next? From the depths, the darkness calls eternally. Don't turn away, for the next revelation awaits in the shadows.